So perhaps you have a Betfair trading strategy revolving around football, or perhaps you're looking at some betting tips on a football match and you're trying to decide what you should do. There's one key metric in football that's obviously critically important, and that is a goal going to be scored? And if you're looking at a series of matches, which matches are more likely to produce goals than others? Well, fortunately, there is an answer. I can describe it to you, and that's what I'm going to do in this video. If you're interested in learning to trade on Betfair, then visit the BetAngel Academy, where you have detailed, structured Betfair trading courses. Or why not visit our website, where you can download a free trial of BetAngel Professional, but also visit the forum, where you can get detailed images, examples, and downloadable files. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon if you want notification of new videos as they're released. So we're looking at a set of football matches here. And my question to you is, which one of these matches is least likely to have a goal within it? If you look at the set of matches that we've got here, you can see that there are a variety of different odds, different teams, different ends of the table. There's a whole mixture. So we also have this situation where you have Burnley, Crystal Palace and Sheffield United at home at roughly similar odds. So which one of these has more goals in it than the other? How can you possibly tell? Well, there is a solution, and that's what we're going to be talking through in this video. It could actually be two videos. So there are a couple of when we reach the end of this video, I almost recorded another section straight after it, but it would make the video too long. So I've cut it at this particular point. And if you want to know the solution to the second problem that we have when we reach the end of this video, then like, comment, tell me that you'd be interested in seeing it, and I can talk you through what would really be part 2 of this video, because it's quite an expansive topic. So I've deliberately limited it to one particular problem in this video. But you can see here that we've got a variety of matches, and we need to rank them in order of the least number of goals within the match to the most number of goals. And the reason that you would do that is when you're betting or Betfair trading, or you're deploying any strategy where you're betting on football, what you're attempting to do is find goals. If you have a strategy that relies upon lots of goals within a match, if you have 3 or 4 goals within a match, they're going to occur in a smaller time interval. But if you have a match where there's going to be very few goals, then any goal that does occur will be over a very long time period. So it's important to do this. You need to understand where are the goals going to come, how busy will the underlying match will be. But you also need to understand that football's very variable. So we're only going to be saying on average here. And that would be part 2 of the video, which would be able to stick a very precise number on that. But what we're more concerned about here is how do we figure out which one of these matches is more likely to produce goals on this particular day. We're not saying that it will, definitely, but we're just saying on average over a period of time, what is the more likely scenario. So let us explore that particular scenario. So we're looking here at a league table, and you can see that we've got Liverpool at the top and Norwich at the bottom. And that is no coincidence, because the teams are ordered in terms of the number of matches that they've won, the number of points that they've scored. And of course, in order to win a match, you have to score goals. So typically you would expect teams at the top of the league to score more goals than teams at the bottom. But that doesn't help you solve one specific problem here, which is that if one team is playing another, it has to be a combination of the two. So what we're saying here is that Norwich generally score fewer goals than they concede on average. And really, when you're looking at the question of how many goals are going to be scored within a match, it's a combination of the two. The inset that I've got here is basically showing you the very top of the division. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is what we actually see within the columns towards the end, where it says goals. So you can see that Liverpool have scored 61 goals and conceded 15. Manchester City have scored 67 and conceded 25. And it's this information that we're going to use to try and construct a model that will allow us to predict roughly how many goals we're likely to see within any particular match within the league. But this is typically where you start. Bring up the league table, look at all of the data within there, and start to form an opinion on how many goals you think could be scored in any particular match. So on this next slide, what I've done is I've actually put some information in the middle of the screen that will allow you to understand how we're combining these statistics together. And we're looking at this initially from a top level. I have to do this so that you can really understand exactly what we're attempting to do and how we're attempting to do it. But we can see here that we've put the top team against the bottom, you know, the biggest contrast that we can get in the league. And we're going to try and work out how many goals on average are scored during an individual game. And you'd expect that to be sort of relatively high, naturally, because we're saying that there's a really strong team and a really weak team. So it's a good contrast to start with to understand what we're looking at. So on the right-hand side of the screen, on your left, on my right, as I'm pointing, you will actually see, so if I point over here, this is the side of the screen I'm indicating that you should be looking at, a set of figures. So you can see 61, 15, 67, 29, 54, 26. And that's indicating the top three teams, of which the top is Liverpool. So we're saying they've scored 51 goals and conceded 15, which you can see we've entered into the data on the spreadsheet that you can see behind me. So in total, there have been 76 goals in games that they have played, and they have played 26 games. So on average, there are 2.92 goals per game, roughly 3 goals per game if Liverpool are playing. Now, if we look at Norwich, we can see that they've scored 24, but conceded 48. And that's the data that you can see on the other side. That's the bottom of the division. And if we add those together, we can see that there are 72 goals in total spread over 26 matches, and therefore we end up with just short of 2.8 goals per game. If we add those two together, what you will see is that we actually end up with 2.85 goals. So you would expect on average around sort of 3 goals per game if Liverpool met Norwich. You'd sort of suspect that maybe it would be 3-0 or 2-1, but you can get an idea of roughly what we would expect to see in a match like this. In contrast, you can see we've put a couple of other examples on here as well. I haven't cross-referenced them onto the league table. You can do that if you want. That's the reason that I'm doing this video. But you can see basically that Crystal Palace have scored 55 goals in 26 games. Arsenal have scored 70 in 26 games. We've added those together and divided them by 2. So 2.12 plus 2.69, which are the averages for each team, divided by 2 is 2.4. So you can see if those two teams played each other, you'd expect a smaller number of average goals. And at the bottom of that list, we've got Crystal Palace and Newcastle, where we've gone through the same process of adding up the number of goals that they've scored, and you can see that that's even lower. So you can see that matching up different teams up and down the league will give you different results. And this sort of makes perfect sense, because a match with Liverpool and Norwich, there are likely to be more goals than between Crystal Palace and Newcastle or Crystal Palace and Arsenal. But you can begin to get a feel for how a match is sort of more likely to pan out in terms of the number of goals by using this sort of data. So I don't know if you've spotted the flaw with what we're doing at the moment, but we're sort of grouping teams together and we're not taking their relative strengths. And there's a problem with that because, you know, while a team is good at home, they may not be good away, and vice versa. And, you know, just combining the total number of goals within a match doesn't take into account the strength of the home and away team. And the fact is, you know, you do see deviations in this. I can totally resonate with this and this season that I'm doing this video in, because at home, Southampton are absolutely atrocious. They just cannot win at home. They've only won 3 games over the course of the season so far, and their ranking is bottom of that home league table. So what you're seeing behind me here is the home and away tables, and basically it's ranking all of the teams according to how well they have performed, either home or away. And you can see Southampton are totally at the bottom. At home, they just can't seem to win. And at the other end, Liverpool can't seem to lose. But the funny thing is, you look at Southampton playing away, and you can see actually their away form is pretty good, quite bizarrely. I have some theories as to why this is the case, but that would be for another video. I think I know how I would stop this as well, and I'm surprised that the coaching staff at Southampton can't see the same thing. Anyway, like I said, that's another debate, and I'm getting all emotive here as a Southampton fan. But basically, if you organise the league tables according to the home and away form, you'll get a much better picture. And the reason for this is what we will see on the next slide. So what we've done on this slide, if we looked at Liverpool v Norwich on a previous slide, and we basically noted that there would be about 2.85 goals. However, you can see what we've done on this particular slide here is we have added up a number of different things, and we have basically come up with a slightly different figure. And the reason for this is we are now taking Liverpool's home record and comparing it to Norwich's away record. So here you can see that Liverpool have scored 35 at home and conceded 9 when they've played there, for a total of 44 over 13 games, which is 3.38, which is pretty impressive, to be honest. 44 goals over 13 games is a pretty big number. But you can see Norwich here. You can see it says scored 22. But I need to explain exactly what we've done here, because what we've done is, because Norwich are the away team, we've inverted those goal rates. So basically Norwich have scored 6 goals away from home and conceded 22. So what we're doing is we're giving those 22 to Liverpool, and we're saying that the number that Liverpool concede will add 6 on because it's Norwich, and that's how many they have scored away. So can you see what we've done there? We've inverted the two around. And this gives us a much better representation of what we think could possibly occur. So when we add these up and then divide them to work out with an average, you can actually see it comes out at 2.77. And in fact, the number of goals that Liverpool are likely to concede, or the number of goals that Liverpool are likely to score and their opposition concede, add up to 35 plus 22. And therefore we're talking about sort of an average of about 2 goals a game that Liverpool will score. But the away team may score on average about half a goal, adding up to 2.77. But you can see there's a big difference here between the number of goals that Liverpool score and concede at home, and therefore this is fairly significant. But you can see what we've done is we've basically worked out the average number of goals that are going to be scored, the number that are going to be scored by Liverpool, and also the number that Liverpool score above the away team. So they basically have a home supremacy of 1.62 goals on average. And we can actually convert those numbers into a percentage, and the chance of there being no goals in this particular match is 6.27%, or that would be odds of about 16 in total. I'll come on to this again in a second. But can you see what we've done here? We've taken the home form, we've taken the away form, and then we've merged the two together to come up with a much more accurate model. So now we've looked at something in theory, let's look at the practical reality of a particular market. So this is a market that's taken place today. It's Crystal Palace v Newcastle. And you can see we've gone through the same process again. We basically said, well, Crystal Palace have scored 10 goals at home. They've conceded 13. Newcastle have scored 12 away, which would then invert into a number of conceded goals for Crystal Palace, and they've conceded 28. So you can immediately see when you start digging through this detail, you begin to get a little bit more texture and flavour to a market. So you can see that Crystal Palace can't really score, and Newcastle seem to concede away. So that gives you a feel for how the match is likely to play out. So we're sort of saying that Crystal Palace have a reasonable defence, but not a very strong attack. But you can see that Newcastle have a bit of a leaky defence, in essence. It gives you a feel for what you think you should expect to see within the match, which you can then compare as the match actually gets underway. But overall, you can see we've added these two together and it's coming out at 2.42. So it's basically saying, on average, we expect this match to have 2.42 goals. And what we're saying there is if this match was played 100 times, the average number of goals would be 2.42, because of course you can't get 2.4 goals in a game. But can you see how all of that is interplaying? We're basically saying that this is the number that is key to us, and putting that number and then ranking it against others will tell us, is this the match that is least likely to see goals today, or is it the match that is most likely to see goals today? And then you can deploy a strategy straight into that match based upon the information that you've got. Now, of course, we need to convert that into odds if you're going to do a bit of value betting. So you can see here we've taken 2.42 and we've basically said that means that there's an 8.87% chance of there being no goals within this particular match. How did we come up with that number? What magical formula did we use to convert 2.42 into 8.87? I almost did that calculation on this video, but when I started putting it onto slides and doing the narration for it, I thought, you know what, this is an entirely different video because there are so many different things to talk about how to perform that calculation. Because if you know that there are going to be 8.87% chance of no goals within a match, then you can price up 0-0. You can say, oh, the odds should be about 11.28. Now, you don't need to worry specifically when you watch this video about that, and I'll show you why on the next slide. But if you are interested in how to do that calculation, because it's deceptively simple, I can produce an entirely separate video for you talking specifically about that, because we have two stages here. One is working out how many goals that there are going to be and who's going to score them, and then the next is converting it into a set of odds. So in this video I've given you that first part, but if you're interested in seeing a video where I convert them into a percentage and then into odds that you can bet into or trade against, let me know and I will produce a separate video. But you don't really need to worry about that too much. Let me show you why. So it's important to note at this particular moment in time that in fact there is a tool that you can use within BetAngel that actually has a lot of this information in it already, that does all of the hard work for you. So we probably will enhance this at some point in the near future, especially with a major football tournament coming up. But when you look at Soccer Mystic, it will actually do some of these calculations for you. If you go into there, it will look and calculate how many goals it thinks there are in the market or what the market is forecasting, and then it will actually go on and give you some odds and data surrounding that. So this is using a similar methodology, not exactly the same, but you'll always find that there's a slight differential between the two prices because Soccer Mystic is pricing it to 100% book and the market is never at 100%. So you'll always see that little bit of differential there. But if you're sort of thinking, well, you know, at the end of this video, how can I get more information? Well, Soccer Mystic actually has some of that data that you require in there. So using it to scan through a few matches over a range of matches on any particular day will give you a decent clue anyway, as will the market. But it's more important on this particular video that you understand exactly what you're looking at and the way that it's calculated, because that's the basis on which you can build a model, a system, a process, or an edge. But yeah, have a look at Soccer Mystic because that does contain some information that we're discussing in this video anyhow. So we now come to the conclusion of doing this across a number of matches. I could do the whole video comparing and cross-comparing and adding together and all of that, but that would take about half an hour to 45 minutes, and I don't think either of us have time for that. So I've truncated it all and basically put it into a little table for you here. And what this table is showing you is what the market thinks is the chance of a match having no goal, and what we've just calculated using the exact method that I have just laid out for you. So you can see the market thinks that the highest chance of a 0-0, in other words, a match not having a goal, is Palace against Leicester, and the least chance is Leicester against Man City. But you can see that if we compare that to our calculations, you can see it matches almost exactly. I say almost exactly because the market can't split Sheffield United and the Burnley match, because both of those matches they basically have the odds that are about the same. But we can rank it because we've actually done the detail behind it and we can actually put it in order. But the most important thing with using a method like this, rather than just looking at the market or trying to look at the market and just go, well, you know, that's sort of fairly obvious, whatever, is that you're actually sticking a number on it. And that's so important, because if you're pursuing a strategy that you want a small number of goals, then obviously you choose Palace and Newcastle. But you can now say, if we meet this criteria, if there's an average of this number of goals within a game, this is when I'm going to deploy the strategy. And at the other end of the table, you can say, and if there are going to be lots of goals within the match, which in this case, the market and us are agreeing that it's Leicester against Man City, then you can say, and this is my barrier, my hurdle for that particular strategy in this particular market. And if you find none of those at either end of the scale, then you can just ignore it. So it's the ability to quantify that going through a process like this gives you, and the ability to actually price up and figure out if you've got an edge. Because if you bet or trade a system into a market that you have identified, then over a period of time, if you've got an edge, you'll see that beginning to grow the amount of bank that you've got. And if you haven't got an edge, you'll see it going backwards and into reverse, and then you'll have to tweak the strategy one way or another. But the advantage of going through these calculations is you actually have a model on which to base your assumptions. You're not guessing, basically, in the overall scheme of things. Now, of course, the model that I presented here is something that I learned to do about 30 odd years ago, and I've refined it endlessly ever since. So, you know, there are extremes that you can go to, or you can keep it as simple as possible. But generally, you know, how could you refine something that we're doing here? So, for example, we've used the entire league over the course of the season so far, but maybe you want to incorporate short-term form into that, or maybe there's an injury to a player, or a change in manager, or there could be a number of different factors to put into play here, which means that you have to tweak the model up and down. And this is something that you can do, and also you'll get better at with a level of experience. So I know, given certain scenarios, how that's likely to affect the team. Or if I see a change in the way that the team is playing or something, then I may just bump up or bump down some of these statistics rather than just relying upon the historical data that you see within the league. However, what I presented for you here hopefully gives you a good view on a model that will allow you to look at matches that are likely to be lower scoring or higher scoring. And you can actually turn this into a percentage. So if you want me to turn it into a percentage and show you the calculation to do that, so you can actually stick a definitive number on it, that's an entirely separate video, which, you know, if you've got a game that you're forecasting that there are going to be 3 goals in, or 2.2 or 2.7 or 2, how does that translate into a percentage? You know, and what can you, there are lots of clever things that you can do from that particular point on. How could you actually stick an exact number on it in terms of what the odds should or shouldn't be? If you want to see that video, then make sure you comment and like on this one and tell me that you're interested, and I will do a follow-up video where not only will we calculate how many goals that there are within a football match, we will actually tell you what the odds should be based upon the number of goals that we are likely to see. So yeah, let me know if you want to see that video, but I hope that this one has been helpful for you.